Hello guys, I've got some nice and interesting gambit to show you today. It's really fascinating how quickly can black mess up in these lines. I checked the lichess database and I was surprised, maybe you will be as well. So let's just see this. It starts with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, so this is the Joko piano, and here I like to play d4. This is the Rosen Gambit. And actually already in this position, most players, like 70%, are going to play not the best move, but they are going to capture with the pawn, which is not the most correct move. They should capture with the knight or the bishop, that would be better. But most people capture with the pawn, and now that is actually transposed into the Haxo Gambit. And here in this position, I really love to play short castling. I actually never played any other move in that position, because I'm hoping for them to play knight to f6, and this is now transposed into max lang attack. A really nice opening, very aggressive for white, full of traps. I just love to play max lang attack. I actually made a video on this opening, so make sure to check it out. But now let's go back for a second. So today I thought to myself, if this is the Joko piano, and this is the Rosen Gambit, and after pawn captures it is the Haxo Gambit, I was like, why castling here has no name? It should have a name, it totally deserves a name, and the logical name is, of course, the Saxo Rosen Gambit. Well, I just want to mess up with the heads of the future civilizations trying to figure out the chess theory in like 5,000 years from now. Anyways, let me explain. The fun can even start before them walking into the Haxo Gambit. If they, in this position, capture with their knight, already here, black tend to mess this up. So you can capture this pawn on e5 with your knight, and now you have a clear threat against the f7 pawn, and it is just totally embarrassing for black players how they misplay this, because like by far the most played move here is knight to e6, trying to block our bishop, but this is a losing mistake because we are going to capture this knight and it doesn't matter which way black recaptures. Let's say they recapture with the d pawn. In this case we can swap the queens and hit them with knight captures on f7, winning a free rook. And if they capture with the other pawn, here we can hit them with queen to h5 check. So the best thing they can do is to block this check with the g pawn, which we are going to capture. Notice how they cannot recapture because the pawn is pinned, the rook is hanging, the bishop is hanging, this discard check is hanging, position is hanging for black, and we are winning. Alright. There is another possibility for you, and you don't have to capture this pawn on e5. Maybe a simpler version of getting a winning position by statistics is to play bishop to e3. Because once again, if you check lichess, by far most players are going to capture the knight on f3, which is a losing blunder because you can recapture with the queen and now you are threatening checkmate, and also this bishop is hanging, so you are going to be up a piece at least. Not to mention that in this position actually most black players are going to capture the bishop and hang mate. Alright, let's go back. This is not really what I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about the Saxo Rosen Gambit, and that is to castle in this position. So there are three most played moves, and that is pawn to d6, knight to f6 and knight to e7. So I already covered knight to f6 in my other video, the max lang attack, so let's just focus on the other two moves. So let's say knight to e7. In this case I love to play knight to g5, and this is like a really annoying knight of ours on the g5 square. And well, actually once again in this position black players are totally misjudging this position, and most of them, once again like 70%, are going to play short castle, which is a losing blunder because we can now hit them with queen to h5, threatening a checkmate. So usually h6 is what is played, but we can continue with knight captures on f7. not only threatening the queen, but also preparing some nastiness with this discard check. There is actually one game in the lichess database that has been played by Saxo Rosen himself. In this position, his opponent tried moving the queen out of the danger and he played queen to e8, which simply walks into a checkmate in 3 moves with this double check. It's a check from the knight and from the bishop, so the king is forced to move. Now this is a discard check and it is also a double check, so the king needs to go back and then gets checkmated with this queen to h8. So that's not playable for black. What they should do is not to move the queen, but to capture the knight with their rook. But if they do that, if they capture the knight, we can continue with bishop captures the rook. It's a check. Now the king has 3 possibilities where to move. And the most played one is king to h8, which happens to be also the worst one. And here we can finish them with a nice move. Bishop captures on h6. So they cannot capture back because, well, after queen captures there's a checkmate. And we are already threatening just to simply move this bishop anywhere on this diagonal, and that would be also a checkmate. So the engine is here recommending them to play queen to g8 and just sacrifice the queen to prolong the game a little. Alright, so that's not really good for black. What should they do? Of course they cannot just get castled. In this position, the best move, and this is the second most played, is pawn to d5. So blocking our bishop. But once again, after simple pawn captures on d5, most of the black players are going to follow it up with a blunderous knight captures on d5. So just getting a pawn, but this walks into knight captures on f7, forking the queen and the rook. And what should they do? Well, the best is to capture this knight, but then our queen comes to f3 with a check. So here mostly they are going to try to block this with their queen, but now our queen is just going to feast on black pieces. So this is another check, and after they block it we even get to capture this dark square bishop. So this is not good for black. So what should they do? If they find the best move, d5, they cannot capture this pawn back, they have to play knight to e5. So with this they are hitting our bishop, so we need to move it to the safety. And here they finally get some time to get safely castled. But our knight on g5 is still going to be pain in their eyes. And we can capture on h7. So after they capture the knight, we can give this check. King needs to hide back on g8 and we can win the knight back, also winning this pawn in the process. So in this position, after black's correct play, the material is equal and Stockfish is also saying that the position is equal. Alright, so this would be it for the lines with them playing knight to e7. Let's now have a look at pawn to d3. So if you see this move, I recommend you to play pawn to c3. Did I say pawn to d3? I meant to say pawn to d6. Sorry about that. So pawn to c3. Here the best move for black is to play bishop to g4 to pin our knight. It is only the second most played move. I will tell you what is the most played move. The most played move is actually capturing the pawn, which is once again not the strongest move, and we'll get to that later. So the best move is bishop to g4, pinning our knight to our queen, and here we can reply with queen to b3. So with this move we are now putting pressure here and also here. And in this position the best move for black is actually a little bit of a counterintuitive move, because now they should just let those pawns be hanging and just capture this knight, which is actually the most played move, and I'm surprised by that. Congrats to black players finding this best move. I wouldn't find it if I were black. So they capture this knight, and in this position we first want to capture on f7, so it's a check, and we force the black king to move and lose his castling rights, and after that, well, we can simply recapture this bishop, and in this position black should play some weird move like pawn to d3, or also developing this knight is okay for them and they will have a slight advantage. But what most players play here is knight to e5, trying to, kick away our bishop, but this is not really a good move. We can first capture this pawn on d4, so we are forking their bishop and their knight. Here their only move is to capture the pawn, and after that we can capture this knight on g8. And after their recapture, we will get to play f4, pushing this knight away, and this is slightly better for white actually. Okay, so this was with kind of a good moves from black. Let's see how can they mess up. So first of all, after queen to b3, some players just don't play this capture. Well, if they don't play that, then most players are going to play queen to d7. So trying to hold on to this pawn like this with their queen. Just notice that they cannot put their queen on e7 or f6, because this just walks into queen captures on b7, and now we are hitting the unprotected rook and the unprotected knight, and we will be winning one of those pieces on the next turn, and there is nothing that black can do to stop us, so this would be just winning for us. But queen to d7 is what they try, and here we can play once again bishop captures on f7. Seemingly just hanging a piece because they can just capture the bishop, but here we hit them once again with queen captures on b7, threatening both the rook and the knight, and they cannot save both. And actually most people mess it up in this position and they go for either rook to b8 or rook to d8, hanging this knight, and we will be up a piece and winning. What they should do is to play king to d7, which is once again a bit of counterintuitive move because it just hangs this rook, right? Well, we can capture this rook, and there is a funny stockfish line here, which is a draw. Black has a kind of a forced draw here, or how to put this, well, but it's funny because first of all they need to hang their rook. Now they can capture this knight, and after we recapture they can go knight to e5. So eyeing this pawn, we can try to cover it with our knight, but they have two attackers, so they can capture here. And after this trade we can even capture on d4, threatening the bishop, and here is when black goes full nuts and just leave everything hanging, even offer the second rook, which we are going to capture, but still they are able to get this perpetual check, and this is just a draw. So that was just the final light that I wanted to share with you. But just remember, most players are going to, hang a knight with rook to b8. Alright, let's go back. So, after pawn to d6, pawn to c3, what if they don't play bishop to g4? What if they play the most common move, which is capturing on c3? Well, after that we are going to follow it up with queen to b3 anyways. And this is a tricky move, because now black has a kind of strange move to deal with this, and they should play bishop to e6. Now this looks a little bit suspicious because we can just capture this bishop, and after they recapture, well, first of all we can even capture here with check, or stronger is to capture on b7 once again. But this is the best thing that black should do. So let's say that we capture on b7, now we are hitting this knight, so they kind of need to waste a move to protect it, and we will be able, they need to protect it with this or something, and we'll be able just to pick up this pawn, and it just looks totally fine for white, although the stockfish is saying that black has a slight advantage. But anyways, this is not what they usually play. It is only like the fourth most played move, I think. What actually by far most people here play is queen to e7. Now this is not like a big blunder or something like that, but it is a little bit of a mistake, and now the queen becomes our prey. So if you see queen to e7, you can immediately capture on c3 with your knight, and your intentions are to go here, of course, to hit the queen. So what are they going to do in this position? Well, there are two moves that are most played, and that is either just developing this knight to f6 or trying to do some damage with knight to a5, forking the queen and the bishop. So let's start with knight to f6. If you see this move, you automatically are going to go bishop g5, pinning this knight to the queen. And here, let's see what black can do. So I think the most played move here is getting castled. Here we are going to continue with knight to d5, so threatening the queen. Now the queen needs to go to d8. If it would go to d7, this is just a blunder because we can capture this knight and they cannot capture back because, well, we can fork the king and the queen. Yeah, so the queen needs to go to d8, and after that we can follow it up with rook to d1. Remember this move, it's a little bit important, although it is tempting to simply capture this knight with any of these two pieces and just damage their structure because they would be forced to recapture with their pawn. But it's better to first play rook to d1. And what are they going to do here? Well, let's say they try pawn to h6, trying to kick our bishop away. Well, we can just capture this knight, force them to damage their structure, and here we can capture on h6, so we are threatening the rook, and the rook cannot even move away because now we can capture on f7, and this is just terrible for black. Alright, so what if they try something else? What if they try to go for knight to a5 in this position? Well, here we are simply going to capture the knight with our bishop. So we are hitting their queen, and well, now if they decide to capture our queen, we can just capture their queen and we are already up a piece. So winning. So what they should do is to capture with their pawn our bishop. And now our queen is hanging, so we need to move it. We go to c3. Now the best move for them is to capture our bishop, and after we are not going to recapture, we are going to first throw in this in between move, a check, because now their king is forced to this line of sight of our queen, and we can follow it up with knight to d7. So it is a discard check. The best thing for them is to play f6 to block the check, and we can grab this rook and we are going to be up an exchange, which is enough to be winning this game. Alright, let's go back. So what if they don't even get castled? What if they play something else? So for example, what if they play just h6 right away and try to get rid of our bishop? Well, in this case, we are going to first play knight to d5, so hitting the queen. The queen goes to d8. Once again, it is needed because of the reasons I explained before. But we are going to capture the knight. And after they recapture, well, now nobody is guarding the f7. And we can just grab it with the check. And after king moves somewhere, now we can slide this bishop out of the danger. And we are winning because, well, the black king is just naked, opened, having an open door day, and also these two pawns are very weak, and this is enough for us to be winning. Alright, let's go back. So that was if they played knight to f6 after we played the knight to c3. So what if they go for the other move and they go for knight to a5? So trying to achieve something with this fork. Well, this is once again already a losing blunder for black, but this one is kind of hard to punish immediately. There is not like some immediate piece winning trap or anything like this. Here you need to be a little more patient with your attack, but well, I will show you one line in this position which I think is kind of forcing, and sometimes in the future I will work on a lichess study where I will try to elaborate on more variations and how to punish black for their moves, because Frankly, there are so many variations in this line where how they can try to deal with our attack, and also there are plenty of options for us how to continue our attack that is just impossible to cover in this video. But let's just go with this line. So first of all, we are going to play queen to a4 check, because now we are kind of forcing them to go back with their knight. That's the only way how to save this piece. And we can follow it up with pawn to b4. So they cannot capture this pawn with their bishop. Of course, they cannot capture it with their knight because that would be illegal. But they cannot capture with their bishop because we could just fork the queen and the bishop and would be winning this way. So what they need to do is to play bishop to b6. And here we can continue with knight to d5, so harassing the queen. So let's say queen to d8. Here we can play bishop to g5. So kind of going for similar moves as the previous variations. And now, well, let's say they will block this attack with their knight, because they also want to develop a piece and get castled in the future. Well, now our priority is going to stop them from castling. We don't want them to castle, so we need to find the forcing moves. So in this position, the best thing I think is to push e5, because now they cannot castle because their knight is hanging. The knight cannot move because it is pinned, but of course they can just capture this pawn. It's a free pawn, right? Well, by them capturing this pawn, now this file is kind of open, and we are going to get advantage with playing rook to d1. And here they cannot castle once again. If they would castle, we can hit them with knight captures on f6 check, picking up the queen next turn. So what they need to do is to block the d-file. So they need to play bishop to d7 to block the d-file. And in this position, well, just notice how they are lined up with our queen. So in this position, we want to push our pawn to b5 to block them. Also, this comes with a tempo on the knight. So the knight needs to move. So the best square for it is to go forward to d4. And here we can capture this pawn because, well, this knight just let the guard of this pawn. So we are going to capture it. Now this is opened. So yeah, you know what's coming. So what they should do here, once again, they should try to block the d-file. That's the best move for them. I mean, this is now the e-file, sorry. They should try to block the e-file. And here we have a nice move, knight captures on f7. So it's hard to judge what would they play, if they would capture with their king or if they capture with the bishop. Let's say they would capture with their king. Here we are going to play knight to f4, threatening to capture this. So they would go rook to e8 to cover the bishop, and here we are anyways going to capture this. And after the capture, we capture the rook. So now the king needs to capture, and it's wild. I mean, it's in the open. So the rook comes to the attack with a check. So they slide back to f7, and here bishop to e3. And finally, after all these moves, now we have an unstoppable piece-winning threat, because there is no way to protect this knight. And the knight is pinned, and the knight is going to be falling in the next few moves, and we will be up a piece finally and winning. Alright guys, so I think this would be it for this gambit. I hope you like this, I hope you learned something, and hey, one more thing. If Eric Rosen is watching this video, I'm so sorry to using your name in the title as a clickbait. I tried to reach to you and contact you and ask your permission first, but you just don't accept new messages on lichess. But anyways, thank you. Thanks to you, I got into chess and you were the first streamer that I start watching. Stay cool as you are, and thanks everybody for watching. Have fun and bye.